Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
2 million encounters and releases under your watch. So not including the Title 42 expulsions, not including violent criminals. Of those 2 million plus that you've encountered and released, how many have you told to go home?
Congressman, individuals who are released are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings under the law where they can make their claim for relief. If their claim for relief is not satisfied, they are subject to removal from the United States.
Subject to removal sounds very different than actually removed. So I'm not interested in the process. I'm not interested in what people are subject to. 2 million people encountered and released. Not the expulsions under Title 42, not the criminals. How many of those people have you deported?
So, Congressman, a few points. Number one.
Just how many of the people? I just want to know how many. It's just a number.
Congressman, we are dealing with a completely broken immigration system.
I get it. No, Mr. Secretary, I'm not going to let you burn my 5 minutes. Do you know the answer? Do you know the number of people out of that 2 million that you've removed that aren't criminals?
I do know that we have removed more aggravated felons.
Right, I'm not asking about them. I've caveated that away, because here's what I'm sort of getting and what your non-responsiveness is demonstrating. The Mayorkas doctrine is this. If you show up at the border and get released into the country, if you don't commit a specific aggravated felony, which, by the way, doesn't include a lot of assault and battery, doesn't include a lot of bad domestic violence, but if you're not one of the people who commit those crimes, you get to stay forever. Is that a fair characterization of your doctrine?
No, that is false.
Then tell me how many you're sending home.
No, that is false.
Okay, well, but you don't know the number of how many you've sent home. Here's another number. 1.2 million people today have been through your entire process, right? They've been through what you call a removal proceeding is just an amnesty dance. Because after the 1.2 million people get an order from the judge saying that they don't have a basis to be here, you still don't remove them. Like, what's your plan to remove those people?
Congressman, that is false.
Okay, how many of them then? Just give me the number.
Congressman, in this country, there are between 11 and 12 million.
Right, but I'm asking about a subset that you won't send home. And the reason you're smirking about it and the reason you won't answer my question is because everybody gets the joke. And the sad thing is it's not just us here, it's the cartels who get the joke too. And so now what you've done to execute this Mayorkas doctrine where so long as you don't commit a crime, you get to stay here and burden our hospitals, burden our schools, burden our social services, burden our jails. You've sent the message to the cartels, and then you've taken this app and you've digitized illegal immigration and you've scaled it to the moon. Like this app that you've got everybody downloading is like the Disney Fast Pass into the country, never to be subject to actual removal, just removal proceedings as you call them. That app doesn't do any search of their criminal history in their home country, does it?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Well, I'm sure, but just answer the question. Does the app that you are out there promoting do any search of people's criminal history in their home country?
Congressman, Customs and Border Protection screens and vets individuals whom they encounter.
Your
thoroughly.
app, it either has the functionality to test their criminal history in their home country or it doesn't. By the way, if it did, you'd have already told me. It doesn't. And then the other epic failure of this that's empowered the cartels is that in these processing centers you've set up in other countries to just wave them all in at a rapid pace, you've had to shut them down in Nuevo Laredo because the cartels were standing outside extorting people. Isn't that right?
Congressman, that is false.
Oh, really? So why did you shut down that facility in Nuevo Laredo?
And the point of safe, orderly, and lawful pathways is to reduce the number of encounters at our southwest border.
But wait a second, you've just shifted those encounters, because right now, for the first time in modern history, more people are showing up at the ports of entry than running through some bush in Yuma, Arizona. And the reason they're showing up at the ports of entry is because you've got the turnstile open, where so long as they've gone and downloaded this app, you just let them in. I got one final question for you, and it's an important one. Is Mexico an ally in this fight against illegal immigration?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, it's hilarious and somewhat troubling that you say that, because like I'm looking at the El Chapo trial where President Nieto took a $100 million bribe from the Sinaloa cartel. Do you think that the subsequent presidents following Nieto weren't offered a bribe by the cartel or didn't take the bribe?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Right, but you can disagree all you want, but what you won't provide is any number. And when you sit there and just kind of ostensibly disagree without any facts, it shows people what the real gig is. The Mexican government is captive to the cartels. They are doing the bidding of the cartels, and based on your response today, so are you.
Chair recognizes himself. Mr. Secretary, you know what the number is, don't you? Number that Mr. Gates was trying to get a response from. You know what that number is, right?
Congressman, I would be pleased to provide this committee, you, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
you don't know now? You don't know what that is? I mean, again, just to read, because what Mr. Gates was trying to get at, I think what the country would like to know is, we know that there's been an influx of people coming in. Over 2 million encounters on our southern border, inadmissible aliens on our southern border. We know that number has come in since Joe Biden's been president. We know it's a big number. And all he was asking was, how many of that 2-point-something million, over 2 million, how many have went through the adjudication process and actually been removed?
Mr.
And
Chairman.
you're telling the Judiciary Committee today you don't know what that number is?
Mr. Chairman, what I am sharing with you is that we will provide you with whatever data you request.
No, that's not where, I want to go right. It's a simple, we've had kind of two simple questions that you didn't give an answer to, and I just want to know, give you a second chance here if you'll do it. What is that number? Out of that 2-point-something universe of inadmissible aliens encountered on our southern border who've come into the country, been released into the country, how many have went through the adjudication process and then been removed?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be pleased to provide you with that.
Can you guess?
Mr. Chairman, it is
Can you give an estimate?
Mr. Chairman, I will not.
Why will you not give an estimate to the American people? Because they would like to know, because that sort of frames it. Here's what's come in, here's who you've allowed in since Joe Biden's been president, and here's the ones who've actually been removed.
I would say two things, Mr. Chairman. Number one, I will provide that data to you. We will do so.
Well, you're not real good at that, because you've said that other times here, and you don't give us the data. I mean, we asked information about the Disinformation Governance Board, and all we get is redacted documents, so you're not real good about that. And it's a simple question, and frankly, a question we ask you to be prepared for. We wrote you 2 letters in the last several weeks to be prepared to answer that kind of question. I think probably that specific question, and you won't give us an answer.
Mr.
And so
Chairman.
the fact that you won't is bad, and the fact that you don't know is just as bad, because it's the one question the country kind of would like to know. What's really happening? When you say all these, pathways and things, and you're just border secure, and all the things you say, we'd kind of like to know what's really happened with the 2-point-something million people who've been released into the country since Joe Biden's been president. How many have went through the adjudication process and been removed?
So now
Simple question.
So now I have 3 points. One, we will provide the data to you.
God bless
Two,
you. We've been waiting, but God bless you. I hope you do it this time.
Two, we have been cooperating with this committee. We have made countless documents and people available to you. We have provided briefings.
Yeah.
And
here's what those, by the way, just so you know, I'll let you finish with your third point. Here's what those documents look like. Here's the one you sent to us on when you formed, it's policy and responsibilities in the department's information manipulation mission. That sounds scary enough. Information manipulation mission, and it's all redacted. And this is the kind of stuff you gave us when we were trying to figure out who was responsible for putting together the Disinformation Governance Board, and I think my colleague, Mr. Johnson, was asking. And now we're asking a simple question about a number. And the fact that you won't give it to us or don't know it is, I think, a concern for all of us. I would say both sides, because the Democrats probably want to know too. They probably, that's something that should be so obvious, and you won't communicate to. Make your third point.
Mr. Chairman, we'll provide that information to every member.
Will it be like this, or will it be a real number? Will it be like that? Will it be a real number?
Mr. Chairman, the third point I would
Let me
make-
ask you real quick. Can you get that number to us like tomorrow? Or is you got to go back, and is it going to take weeks and months and haggling back and forth on all the letters we do? Congress writes letters to agencies and we haggle back and forth, all that dance we have to do. Or can you just get us the number?
Mr. Chairman, we'll provide that data to you as promptly as possible. My third point would be the most fundamental point of all when we speak of immigration. We are dealing with a fundamentally broken system. We have between 11 and 12 million.
I got 50 seconds, so I appreciate that. You've said that before, so I got that point. Don't mean to cut you off, but I got to get this. Now, in your testimony, you said you've arrested 14,000 smugglers. Seems like a big number to me. What happened to those guys?
Those individuals, Mr. Chairman, are, if the evidence so supports, prosecuted for smuggling.
You've referred them to DOJ. You've arrested them. You've given them over to DOJ. What's happened to them? Have they been indicted, taken to trial, found guilty? Are they in prison somewhere? What's the status?
let
And that is a huge number, 14,000 smugglers. I mean, God bless you for getting them, but I'd like to know what happened to them.
Very, very pleased to provide that data to you. Let me provide some examples.
You just told us a couple minutes ago you work closely with the FBI. We'd like that information too. That's important. Have you arrested any of them multiple times?
Congressman, I'll provide that information for
You think that's a possibility? Some of those smugglers you've arrested more than once?
Congressman, when I prosecuted immigration crimes in the 1990s, we saw individuals who had repeated violations of criminal laws of the United States and repeated removals from the United States. I've prosecuted.
My time has expired. But you think a smuggler, you catch someone smuggling people, smuggling drugs, that guy would be prosecuted, and you'd think you would, again, know that answer too. But we hope you get those answers. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, on April 28th, 2022, I ask you, quote, will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no, end quote. You responded with, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. I then asked, we have operational control of the borders? You responded, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. Followed up, I said, I read to you the definition of operational control. I actually held up this chart. Operational control as defined under the Secure Fence Act. Put it up for plain reading, plain as day. I put up the second part of the same statute, which defines operational control. Means the prevention of all unlawful entries in the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. I said to you, do you stand by in your testimony that we have operational control in light of this definition? You responded with, quote, I do, period, end quote. Earlier, you testified I didn't give you a chance to finish. Yet you specifically, when asked and held up a statute defining exactly what operational control meant under the Secure Fence Act, you said, quote, I do. I believe that was purposeful. I believe you want the American people to believe we have operational control of the border when we very clearly do not. Less than a month later, in Homeland Security, you testified, quote, under that strict definition, this country has never had operational control. This year, House Homeland Security, then Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz testified before the Homeland Committee that DHS did not have operational control of the border, either by the statutory definition or not. Now that is an honest answer. In the Senate Judiciary Committee, shortly thereafter, you testified with respect to the definition of operational control, I do not use the definition that appears in the Secure Fence Act. And the Secure Fence Act provides statutorily that operational control is defined as preventing all unlawful entries in the United States, and by that definition, no administration has ever had operational control. If you will recall when you testified here in front of me when I asked that question, when you very clearly stated, we do have operational control, when presented with the actual definition of operational control, you didn't hesitate, you said, I do, and you in fact then referred back and said, I believe that my predecessors would have said the same thing. I asked Chad Wolf that question in this room, and Chad said, well, no, we didn't use that framing to say we have operational control. We're striving to achieve operational control, but you didn't do that. You looked straight at the American people, straight at me, straight at every person on this committee, and said, we have operational control. Why?
Congressman, 2 points. One, you did not let me complete my answer. Two,
hold on. Let's give you your second point. Go ahead.
Thank you. Two, the Secure Fence Act defines operational control as not a single individual crosses the border.
I'm aware. I read it, and I read it to you, and you read it, and in fact, you said, I do. You didn't hesitate. You didn't say, I do. I need to explain what I mean by I do. You said, I do, over and over again. And here's the problem with that. This is a pattern. Did you lie Another time when you said on September 24th, 2021 at a press conference, quote, "We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism," when responding to the alleged whipping incident by the Border Patrol agents who report to you. When in fact, on October 22nd, 2022, it was reported that 2.5 hours before that press conference, Marcia Espinoza, Assistant Secretary of DHS Public Affairs, emailed you and CC'd other DHS leadership, alerting you all that the photographer who took the images did not see any whipping occur, invalidating the initial claim. And it wasn't until May of this year that you corrected the record to say, well, let me just correct you right there because actually the investigation concluded the whipping did not occur. Don Rosenberg, in this very room, testified a few weeks ago that you lie. It is a perpetual pattern, and the fact is, there are real people that are impacted by that. We have now had, since you testified, we have had something like 200 people a day dying from fentanyl deaths, which would amount to 90,000 people. I showed you before, when you were here, the lost voices of fentanyl, the hundreds, the thousands of Americans that continue to die, 90,000 since you came into this committee and lied to us saying we have operational control. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief and yield my time since I'm kind of wasting my time here. I'll be honest with you. Secretary Mayorkas, do you take full responsibility for all decisions of action or inaction made at your agency? Do you personally take full responsibility
For
all of the decisions made at your agency?
I am the Secretary of the Department.
So it means yes.
I bear ultimate responsibility for the decisions
yes.
made.
Yes, okay. So you mentioned earlier that in your definition, you have operational control of the border. Can you define what you mean by that?
What we mean, because under the Secure Fence Act, it means that not a single individual would cross the border. Under that definition, no administration has had operational control.
So what number do you have? 5 million, 10, if less than 5 or 10, or less than a couple 100,000 get away or more? I mean, what is your definition?
What we do, Congresswoman, is we
Do you have a number?
What we do is we look at the resources that we have available to us and ask ourselves, are we deploying those resources to achieve the most effective results for the American people? That is what we do, and we are hopeful, working with you and other members of this committee, to increase the funding for the Department of Homeland
So
Security.
fine, we hear funding, but I've been at the border and you've been at the border too. How would you grade your job on a scale of 0 to 10? How would you grade yourself?
Congresswoman, I am immensely proud to work.
How would you grade yourself?
Congresswoman, I am immensely proud to work with the men and women of the Department of Homeland
No,
Security.
yourself, your job, not all of the women. I'm sure there are a lot of great men and women in your department. How would you rate your job as a head of your agency?
It is the honor of my life.
From 0 to 10, so you cannot grade it. How would grade your preparedness to this committee meeting on scale from 0 to 10? We ask information, you all these promises, letter. I'm not wasting my time. I'm sorry, I don't want to use bad word, what you can do with all these letters, because we keep giving money and sending letter and you tell us BS back. So how would you rate yourself, your preparedness to this committee?
It is the honor of my lifetime to work with the men and
From
women.
scale 0 to 10, how would you say how prepared you came to this hearing?
I will repeat what I said.
So you're not answering any questions. You are not answering any Republican question. Is it something that you intend to not respond to any questions of Republicans? You came with that intent.
That is incorrect, Congresswoman.
Well, you're not answering any questions.
It is.
I mean, every time I hear you say, we will, we shall, yeah, I don't know. You don't know any numbers. You don't even know how many people you actually, you prosecuted, how many people you deported. You're nothing. How can you say you know how your department is run? As executive, you don't know these numbers?
Congresswoman, let me share with you.
Well, you haven't shared anything useful here.
Let me share
I'm
with you.
sorry to tell you, I'll yield to Chairman Jordan because I'm not going to be wasting your time with this charade and circus. You do not have an intent to do that, and it is a serious national security issue. This border and cartels are stronger. A lot of money NGOs are making who knows what, and probably a lot of corruption over there. And we have a national security crisis, and you sitting here and saying, looking at us with very smiley face, it's unacceptable. But I yield to Chairman Jordan.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Mr. Secretary, of the 140 illegal aliens you've encountered who are on the terrorist watch list? Again, this is Mr. Ice's question earlier in the day. What is the status of those 140 individuals?
First of all, let me allow the record to reflect that I'm not smiling, nor have I smiled.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, will you repeat your question, please?
The 140 individuals who've been encountered on the border who are on the terrorist watch list, what's the status of those individuals?
I believe that question already has been posed, and I mentioned to the chairman that we will provide that data to you.
Have any of them been released, I guess is another way of framing that.
Mr. Chairman, let me say this. Individuals who pose a threat to public safety or national security are detained pending their removal.
Well, that's not what the Inspector General said. He said CBP released a migrant on the terrorist watch list and ICE faced information sharing challenges planning and conducting the arrest. This is from Mr. Kufari, the Inspector General at DHS. You disagree with Mr. Kufari?
We respectfully do.
You do? Okay. I would yield my time to the gentleman from Louisiana.
I've only got 25 seconds. I'll just say I don't have time for a question because you'll be elusive, but I just, for the record, since we're stating things for the record, I've been in Congress 7 years. I think you're the most dishonest witness that has ever appeared before the Judiciary Committee. And I think I speak for a lot of my colleagues. This is such a frustrating exercise for us because our constituents want answers. They're tired of the open border. They're tired of people dying from fentanyl overdoses, and it's your fault. It's my time.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
No, there's no point of order in the middle of this. This is my opinion. I think it's shared by millions of American people.
Based on the
And you
standard,
show no shame.
Chairman, this is based on the standard that the chairman set out in previous hearings. Calling a witness dishonest is over the line that you drew at a previous hearing.
I'm not pulling the words down. That speaks for the American people.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Mayorkas, members of this committee, please turn your attention to the video screens.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
Mr. Secretary, I can understand why you didn't stand with me and my colleagues and clap. You didn't want to clap at that because you and Joe Biden believe just the opposite of what President Clinton just said. You believe in open borders and complete chaos. Did you notice the bipartisan support in the chamber? As the video was played, everybody was clapping in that chamber. If I were in Congress in 1995, I would have also stood. Because I wasn't, I stand here today. Other than President Donald J. Trump, the greatest president in my lifetime with the most safest and secure border, I believe President Clinton understood just how important border security is to our nation. But boy, oh boy, have times changed. 28 years later, the left has gone off the rails. They've gone completely nuts. They've done just the opposite of what the leader of the Democrat Party, President Clinton, stood for on border security in 1995. This committee's ranking member, he was in Congress in 1995. I assume he stood. It seemed like the majority, if not all of the entire chamber, they stood. Matter of fact, Mr. Clinton delivered his speech in the third year of his first term. And he was reelected in 1996. He beat Bob Dole, won by over 8 million votes, won the Electoral College 379 to 159. He had the support of the American people, and I'm going to assume the ranking member also voted for Bill Clinton in 1996. We have two other members, Ms. Jackson and Ms. Lofgren. They were both freshmen at the time. I will assume they stood during that powerful speech as well. And do you know why they supported and voted? They voted for legislation in 1996 strengthening our immigration laws. I applaud them for that. So what's changed, folks? What's changed with the Democrat Party? I'll tell you what's changed. If you wouldn't have heard President Clinton's voice or seen his face, you would have thought Donald Trump delivered that speech. I don't believe that President Clinton was called a racist, a white supremacist who hated immigrants, as the left and the dishonest media has painted Donald J. Trump to be. Mr. Mayorkas, there's a reason why you and Joe Biden have allowed 5.5 million people to cross our southern border. This is about votes and elections. I have a report from the Heritage Foundation titled Tracking Movement of Illegal Aliens from NGOs to Interior of the USA. Why do you think NGOs have moved illegal immigrants to 431 of the 435 congressional districts? The truth is, hear me, it's because the Democrats' progressive policies are not acceptable to Americans. Heritage obtained a sampling of approximately 30,000 cell phones that were tracked to NGOs along border states. They tracked approximately 22,000 devices at 20 NGO locations in January 2022. The same devices were later traced to 431 separate U.S. congressional districts, and of the 52 with the highest rate of tracked devices, 71 of them were Republican congressional districts. The report revealed that it's not a coincidence, folks. The flood of illegal immigrants means a continued rise in surplus laborers. That surplus drives down the wages of existing middle-class and lower-class job holders until they leave the job forces, and then they're forced to go on welfare with the hopes that they will become loyal supporters of the Democrats. That's what this is all about. If this isn't about votes, one-party rule, keeping the Democrats in power, I make this suggestion. If you put the American people first, you should refer back to Trump's border policies, but you won't because you hate him. You despise the man. So give Bill Clinton a call, and then he can help you with the border crisis. As President Clinton stated, we are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. You, sir, have betrayed constitutional order, neglected your duty, and violated the trust of the American people. And as a nation of laws, I look forward to your impeachment. That I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley.
Mr. Secretary, last year you testified before this committee that this administration's policies were not responsible for the surge of illegal border crossings. And today you've testified that this administration's policies are responsible for what you claim is a decline in illegal border crossings. So why is it that you deserve credit when numbers go down but not blame when numbers go up?
Congressman, 2 points. One, the approach that we are taking, expanding lawful pathways and delivering consequences for those who do not use them, is working, but I want to communicate that the challenge remains. The challenge is a persistent one on our southern border. It has been for decades, and what we need is
Mr. Secretary, you're speaking in general terms, and I think this is why many of us on the committee are frustrated with the lack of accountability, is that you have shattered all records in terms of illegal border crossings. You say that has nothing to do with the dramatic change in policies you had, and then there's a brief decline, and you cite that as evidence that you're doing a good job. And I think that's why so many Americans have lost faith in this administration's ability to secure the border. But I want to actually reference some remarks you made that I found somewhat encouraging. This was on the topic of detainers. You made these remarks early in your tenure, April of 2021, at a UCLA discussion with the Immigration Law and Policy Center. You said this, you referred to an example of someone who crossed the border illegally and went on to commit sex offenses. And you said, I do not believe that individual should be released into the community. You said, I think the state facility should turn that individual over to ICE directly. And you added, I think that is a public safety need. You went on to say that after such a person had served their sentence, if they were a citizen, there might be no way to keep them out of the community. But you said, I have a tool at my disposal with respect to an individual who unlawfully entered the country. You said, I feel strongly about this. Is it a tool that I have at my disposal? It is a tool I feel obligated to employ. I am going to protect the public, you said. It's a very strong statement in favor of detainers. And yet, over the last couple years, we have seen the actual use of detainers decline dramatically. Fiscal year 2021, there were 65,000. Fiscal year 2022, 78,000. That's about half the average during the Trump administration, about 1/3 the average during the Obama administration. So if detainers are such a powerful tool, why have you used them so sparingly?
Congressman, let me communicate a very important point, that individuals who pose a threat to public safety or national security are detained. That is the immigration policy of the Department of Homeland Security under my leadership.
But why are you detaining much less than your predecessor administration?
Well, one is our detention capacity is limited, which is why we prioritize public safety and national security threats, number one. And number two, detainers are sometimes not honored by particular jurisdictions.
I want to move on to that in a second, but just briefly, has the White House directed you to limit the use of detainers?
Congressman,
That's a yes or no question. Has the White House?
Congressman, no, they have not.
Okay, thank you. So on this topic of jurisdictions not honoring detainers, you have been critical of these so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. In a 2022 speech to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, you said some of your cities have declined to cooperate with immigration authorities in the removal, the apprehension, and removal of individuals, even if those individuals pose a public safety threat. You said, I will be coming to you and asking you to reconsider your position of non-cooperation. The public safety, the public's well-being for which we are all charged is, I think, at issue, you said. So, Mr. Secretary, you agree that sanctuary policies threaten public safety?
Congressman, what do you mean by sanctuary policies?
Because the definition that you gave right there, where you said the declining to cooperate with immigration authorities and the removal, the apprehension or removal of individuals, even if those individuals pose a public safety threat. Are those sanctuary policies, as you define them, a threat to public safety?
So sanctuary policies are defined differently by different communities.
But to your definition,
if I may,
is it a threat to public safety?
I do not consider it in the service of public safety to release an individual into the community when that individual can be released to Immigration and Customs Enforcement for prompt removal.
Thank you. Do you oppose state policies that forbid local authorities from cooperating with ICE?
I am aware of some that I do oppose.
So you oppose California's sanctuary state law?
I am not familiar with the particulars of that law.
Have you encountered California's restrictions on cooperation with federal immigration authorities?
Congressman, I believe it is imperative that we cooperate with one another. Jurisdictions cooperate with us when it serves the public safety need.
Thank you. I'm out of time, but I would like to restate for the record that the policies you said that you oppose, overriding the ability of local jurisdictions to cooperate, that's exactly what California's sanctuary state law does. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thanks, sir. The chair yields to Ms. Hageman for 5 minutes.
Thank you. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution rests on the principle that no person or institution, including the government, has a monopoly on the truth, and that viewpoint-based suppression of speech by the government is dangerous and may even spell the death of a constitutional republic. Under the First Amendment, the government has no power to restrict expression because of its message, its ideas, its subject matter, or its content. As the Supreme Court has explained, if there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. Labeling speech misinformation does not strip it of its First Amendment protection. That is so even if the speech is untrue, as some false statements are inevitable if there is to be an open and vigorous expression of views in public and private conversation. In refusing to carve out a First Amendment exception for false speech, the framers of our Constitution recognized the significant danger in making the government the ultimate arbiters of truth. And it is axiomatic, in the words of the Supreme Court, that the government may not induce, encourage, or promote private persons to accomplish what it constitutionally is forbidden to accomplish. Secretary Mayorkas, it was reported in May that the DHS, through the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant Program, is funding groups targeting conservatives and equating them to domestic terrorists. Originally intended to combat foreign terrorist organizations' operations in the U.S., it has become yet another government tool weaponized against citizens to violate First Amendment protected affiliations and speech. One grant to the University of Dayton for a program titled Prevents O hosted a seminar titled Extremism, Rhetoric, and Democratic Precarity. One of the speakers, a known Antifa member, as part of his presentation shared a pyramid of far-right radicalization, which likened the Republican Party to the Heritage Foundation, the American Conservative Union, Fox News, Breitbart News, the National Rifle Association, Prager University, Tea Party Patriots, the MAGA movement, and the pro-police Blue Lives Matter movement, and the Christian Broadcasting Network as the first steps on path leading to Nazism and militant neo-Nazism, among other appalling ideologies and groups. This presenter reportedly also taught tactics on how to pressure the removal of conservatives from platforms, and he's even quoted as saying, "A lot of things we are doing are illegal, and a lot of it involves breaking the law." Secretary Mayorkas, does the affiliation with conservative or Christian beliefs make someone a Nazi or a domestic terrorist?
Of course not.
Okay. Then if that's so, why is your agency targeting Americans who are Christians and conservatives?
We are not.
Okay. Secretary Mayorkas, when did you become aware that the University of Dayton was implementing your grant funding program to target conservatives and Christians?
It is my understanding that it is not.
When did you become, so you're not aware of that?
No, it is my understanding that it is not.
You're unaware of the information that has been produced, and have you ever seen the pyramid that it's up on the screen right now?
I learned about the individual speaker's comments, with which I profoundly disagree.
Okay, so when did you find out about the speaker's comments?
I don't quite recall, Congresswoman.
All right, well, you know what, Mr. Mayorkas, I actually really want to thank you as well for coming here today, for your performance. I have watched with absolute fascination as you have danced and dodged and lied. Yes, lied. We know you've lied, you know you've lied, but more importantly, the American public knows that you lied throughout your testimony today. And yet you believe that you and your fellow architects of the censorship industrial complex think that you should be able to determine what is and isn't true, and what is and isn't untrue. You are the walking, talking epitome of the very tyrant that our forefathers recognized would gravitate towards government service. And it is because of people like you that they drafted the First Amendment. I thank them for their foresight. I thank them for recognizing that you and people like you would do everything in your power to control speech, to control freedom, to take away our rights. And they've written a document that isn't going to allow you to do that. Unfortunately, we still have courts and judges who recognize that you don't have the power that you are attempting to take, that you do not have the right to limit our freedom of speech, our freedom of association, our right to communicate. Thank God we have the First Amendment so that we can stop you from doing what you've been doing. With that, I yield back.
Your accusations are false.
Thank you. The chair yields to Mr. Hunt from Texas for 5 minutes.
A country without borders, sir, is not a country at all. A home without a roof and a home without doors, sir, is not a home at all. I have 3 young children at my home. They're all under the age of 4 years old. My home is secure because I lock it up every single night because I care about their safety. It's actually the #1 role of our federal government is to keep our citizens safe. I'm a combat veteran. I'm willing to give my life for that. West Point guy, flew Apaches in Baghdad, and safety is something that's paramount to me. It's actually the reason why I'm in this room right now, is to figure out ways to keep our citizens safe. When you're at your home, sir, do you lock your doors?
Congressman, thank you very much for your service in our military. It's the highest form of service.
Thank you. Do you lock your doors at your home?
Congressman, I take care of the safety of my family.
Understood.
And we in the Department of Homeland Security work every day to to protect the safety and security of the American people.
So you would agree that the American public should be afforded the exact same level of safety and security that you provide for yourself and your own family?
That is what 260,000 people dedicate their careers to.
Understood, sir.
Congressman.
Can you tell me the number of unaccompanied minors who have crossed our southern border during your tenure as Secretary?
Very pleased to provide that data to you, Congressman.
Okay. I've also heard that there are proponents of this administration that say that the fentanyl is coming across our southern borders, coming through legal ports of entry. Does that mean that no fentanyl is being smuggled across our border other than legal ports of entry?
Congressman, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection data evidences that more than 90% of the fentanyl that enters this country is coming through the ports of entry.
So that means that there are other parts of the border where fentanyl is pouring into our country.
That is precisely why we have dedicated increased resources, both personnel and technology, to interdict more fentanyl in these past 2 years than in prior years.
So I hear that, but I'm really speaking for the American public and the people that are in my district. That's not what we're seeing, because we're seeing an increased number of people being murdered by fentanyl every single day. You understand these numbers, correct?
Oh, I do, and Congressman, those numbers have been escalating for more than 5 years.
But they've escalated exponentially during your tenure. Chip Roy went through these numbers. I was sitting here watching. I'm actually appalled at just how much this has happened.
It is a tragedy, the devastation that fentanyl wreaks on our communities, and I look forward to working with you and with all of the members of this committee in addressing this challenge. This requires a united effort. This is not a partisan issue.
But unfortunately, sir, it's become a partisan issue. And I feel like we on this side are the ones that are truly trying to defend the lives of our fellow Americans. Switching gears on this one. This woman is Kamala Harris. She's the current vice president of our country. She's also the border czar. Now, that was dubbed by your boss. You see, on March 21st, 2021, President Biden tasked Vice President Kamala Harris with solving the border crisis and finding the root causes of illegal immigration because, as Biden said, she is the most qualified person to do the job. I'd like to make a motion to submit this transcript of Joe Biden's March 24th press conference to the record, Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
It's been 855 days since Joe Biden named Kamala Harris the border czar. Has she solved the root cause of illegal immigration, in your opinion?
Congressman, you have mischaracterized the vice president's role. The vice president is addressing...
No, I have not mischaracterized. Actually, that was the job that was given to her by the President of the United States of America. How did I mischaracterize that?
Congressman, the vice president...
Okay, that's fine. So she has not solved the issue. I think that's actually pretty clear, and I think my colleague Chip Roy did a very good job of articulating that. I want to go to my next topic, and this is something that the American public is really frustrated with because it's been brought to my attention, and I think I've known it for a very, very long time. But for those who are not watching, the Secret Service is an agency that is within the Department of Homeland Security. This has been the case since March 1st, 2003. Now, sir, I'm assuming that you're aware that cocaine was found by Secret Service in the White House a couple of weeks ago. Is that right?
Yes.
According to Secret Service, marijuana was also found in the White House twice last year, twice. And we don't know who brought the drugs into the White House, which is the most secure building on earth. And if we can't secure the White House, then how can we secure the border? And without proper leadership, I am so fearful that we have turned our beloved White House into a trap house. And the American public deserve far more than that, sir. Thank you for your time. I yield back the rest.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just a couple things to remind you. I know you have some sharp people there sitting behind you who work at the department. There's a number of things we want responses to, and I've been keeping a list throughout the things. So I just want to reiterate that, and then we'll adjourn the hearing and let you get back to your office. We want to know the number of removals. Obviously, we've asked that several times, so if you could please get us that number. We will put this in some kind of written correspondence to you, but we just want to emphasize we want that number. We want to know the status of the 14,000 smugglers you referenced in your opening statement. What has happened? Is DOJ prosecuting? Have you referred them? What is the status? Have any of those individuals been arrested multiple times? We want to know the status of the 140 on the terrorist watch list this year, the 238 total over the last 2 years, what their status is, and specifically when you said the IG's report was wrong, and the IG's report said that one of these individuals on the terrorist watch list has been released into the country. We want to know specifically how you interpret and why you say the IG is wrong. Then we want to know the parole categories that Mr. Bishop raised in his questioning, how you can categorize someone and then still categorize a whole group of individuals and then say you're still going case by case to meet the law when it comes to parole. And then finally, actually two last things. The Misdis Malinformation Committee within CISA, within DHS, we want to know the activities of that group. We'll have specific question around that. We want to know who's involved in that group and if it's still meeting and working with social media companies in light of the court decision on July 4th from the Western District of Louisiana. And then finally, to the gentleman, Mr. Moore's question about the tragic situation of the young lady in Alabama. We wrote you about that specific situation. Mr. McClintock and I wrote you on behalf of this back on May 24th, and you've not responded to that. So we'd like a response to that previous request as well. So I think that's 7 things that the committee, both Republicans and Democrats, I believe, would like answers to. And if we'll get that to you in some kind of written letter ASAP, but now you know and you can begin working on that and get it back to us if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Thank you for being here today. The committee is, without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witness or additional materials for the record. Without objection, the hearing is adjourned.